Good evening, my friends. Welcome to your Friday Night Live. We are here to talk about female evil, but first we're going to talk to Spencer, who may in fact be female evil personified. Might not be the case. Spencer, if you want to unmute, I'm all ears. Don't forget, Nashville, September the 12th, 2026. It's going to have a great, powerful, deep, and meaty debate with Jay Dyer. We're also going to have a meetup. There's also VIP stuff. Lots of sliced stuff to go around. And I hope that you can join us. All right, Spencer, are you talking? Yes, no? Going once, going twice. I think not. I think not. All right. So we are going to talk a little bit about female evil, but I'm going to start. Are you comfortable with things a little personal? You know me. Always a blank wall of incomprehensible aloofness. Never any passions, never wearing my heart on my sleeve, nothing like that. That would be crazy. So,
hello?
When it comes to female evil, well, I got to tell you, I'm going through a helium-hearted I'm feeling a certain helium-hearted sense of validation. Because I have been talking about female evil my entire life, from my mid-late teens, so that's quite a chunk of years ago now, almost 45 years. I've been talking about female evil. Of course, on my show, I did shows, entire 3-part series on female evil back 2011 or something like that. So I've been talking about female evil because it's not the stuff you know that'll get you. It's not the stuff you don't know that'll get you. It's the stuff that you don't know that will get you. And that is the reality of female evil. Now, male evil is kind of in your face. It's up front, and we see it. We see it in physical violence. We see it in bruised women and bruised children. We see it in fisticuffs, and we see it in war, and we see it in criminal activity. We see it in shootings, guns, and so on. And so male evil, male violence is kind of up front. It's kind of key, right? We see it. Now, of course, I've made the case that male violence, to some degree, comes out of female violence. I do this with the Bomb in the Brain series, Bomb in the Brain, fdrurl.com/BIB to check that out. But yes, it is very, very important that we understand female evil. It's very hard for us to understand female evil. So women, of course, as you know, occupy a uniquely powerful position in the social hierarchy, right? Because women get pregnant and then need 20 years of support to raise a child or children. So they have a uniquely powerful position in the hierarchy of society. And they are the prizes in war. Men tend to be killed in war or turned into slaves. Women tend to be turned into concubines, which is why, when there's a lot of social instability, women turn all kinds of 50 shades of gray and start to prefer aggressive outsiders, right? The heat map outsiders, right? That's just a survival mechanism. If Genghis Khan is coming down and is going to win, you better learn to like Genghis Khan's men, or you are not going to make it. My own mother, of course, I'm sure brutally assaulted in the most heinous ways by the Russian communist troops pouring into Germany after the Second World War, or during and after the Second World War. So, women are the prizes in war and men are destroyed. Of course, if you have a situation where you're going to lose 90% of either sex, it better be the men. Because you can't repopulate with 90% men and only 10% females, but you can certainly repopulate with 10% males and 90% females. The males might just get a little tired and need a couple of cigarettes from time to time, but you can do it. So women have a unique power in society because we need them and their reproductive commitments desperately, desperately, desperately. We defer to women. We are happy to play the game of Schrodinger's feminist with women. You're powerful. You are all independent and you don't need no man. And you're a victim. Oh, sorry, you want to switch? You want to switch it up? You're a victim now? Okay, you're a victim and you're hard done by and things just act upon you, right? So we have to defer to that kind of stuff because we need women to have kids. Well, I guess we used to in theory. We need women to have kids and we need women to raise kids. Otherwise, there's no real point to any of this, right? So women occupy a uniquely powerful position in society. We also need women to commit to raising the kids. Just getting pregnant and having the kids doesn't do much for society if women aren't willing to sort of sit in and raise them and not just raise them, like tend to them like potted plants, but to actually transmit and transfer culture down from the men who largely make culture out of thin air and the women who transmit culture, neither of which is more important than the other. There's no point making culture if it's not transmitted, but you can't transmit a culture that's not made, so it's a yin-yang. Both equations are necessary. We need, for cultural continuity, for women to accept the culture and transmit the culture to their children. And women are, in general, receivers of culture. I'm talking historically, I'm not talking sort of some ideal situation, but women receive culture largely from men, a minority of men, and then women amplify and transmit that culture to children, which is why it works really well when you have a good Renaissance, Enlightenment, Western culture. It works very badly when communists and nut jobs take over the culture, because then they use women to beam and broadcast that corrupted culture into the minds, hearts, and souls of children, thus destroying everything that has been built up. So female evil. Men tend to fight men. Women tend to attack children. Men also will attack women. So it generally tends to be the stronger attacks the weaker. Now, there's no bigger power disparity in the world than that between a mother and a child. And we could say father and a child, but women are responsible for most of childcare. A husband who beats up his wife is reprehensible and evil, but in general, she can leave, she can run to her mother, she can go to the cops. It's this rule of thumb thing is just kind of a falsehood that's sort of made up to denigrate men, but beating women has been frowned upon. Essaying women has been largely frowned on throughout almost all of human history. So a husband who attacks his wife is a bully and a coward, but of course, a wife who attacks a child is almost infinitely worse. Because the child is not a legal adult, the child has no independence, the child is a tiny percentage of the size of the parent in terms of weight, particularly when they're babies and toddlers, and the child can't leave. Child's got nowhere to go. And the brain is immature and all of that. So for women to attack children is worse than for husbands to attack wives. Plus, of course, wives in general throughout the West for a long time have had a significant say in who they marry. Children have zero say in their parents, right? Children are not floating above in some platonic ideal world and then, I like that one, let's go with that one, right? So a woman who chooses a man who is violent towards her had a say in the matter. She had a choice. Any reasonably attractive young woman has dozens of men she can date or who will be willing to date her. And so if she chooses a bad man, if she chooses a violent man, the man is still violent and bad. But she had a choice. And that is a very important distinction. The children have no choice and can't leave. The woman has almost infinite choice and can leave. So female evil is important. Women complain about men of course, without ever acknowledging that men are raised by women. You know? I mean, and the typical go-to is misogynist, right? You hate women. If you criticize women, you just hate women. And that's because it's hard for women to conceive, not all, right? It's hard for a lot of women to conceive of criticism that is not motivated by hatred, because they tend to be very high in the big five personality trait, agreeableness, which means they want people to get along. They smooth things over. They don't like any open conflict. They like it all buried and surreptitious. And so if you tell something to someone that hurts her feelings, it must be because you hate her. Because that's how women wield the weapons, right? I mean, a man won't just go up and punch another man. Like, imagine there's some barbecue, some guy comes, like, clocks the guy, right? Just comes up and punches the guy straight in the nose. You'd say, man, he must really hate that guy, because he just, right, just punched. But women fight with words. And so a man will punch and hurt and make your nose swell up and give you a black eye or whatever. But a woman will fight with words in general, right? The reputational destruction, and women will manipulate other women into becoming less attractive, right? So women will manipulate other women through vanity into becoming more masculine, because the more masculine a man is, the more feminine a woman he wants, to sort of balance that energy. And so women want to keep the masculine men to themselves, so they will convince other women to go be girl bosses and be aggressive and be loud and shouty and thump and I'll be one of the boys and all of that, because that is not going to attract a masculine man, and they want to keep the masculine man for themselves. So they say, cut your hair short, put in a nose ring, get a tattoo, be a dude, right? Be a dude. And again, the more masculine, which generally means the higher testosterone, the more successful the man, he's going to want a female that's feminine, and therefore, well, and of course, women also want to convince other women not to stay at home, because it's very hard for a woman to compete with a man who's got a wife at home, right? Because if the man has a wife at home, then he's going to be able to stay late, work harder, go on trips, and so on. She can't necessarily do that, especially if she's got the eponymous cats, right? So female evil is something I've been talking about for a long time, and people, of course, have lambasted me as anti-women. Some people, obviously not anybody with any brains. And to me, it's always been, fundamentally confusing bullshit. It's been confusing bullshit. Why? Well, women, I was told, and quite repeatedly and quite vociferously, I was told that women are equal to men, and I should never think that they're not, right? So men can be evil, and if women want to be equal to men, then women can be evil. Oh, sorry, what's that? Oh, you only want to be equal to men in the pluses. You never want to be equal to men in the minuses. You want to be equal to men when it comes to having the vote without having to do military service, when it comes to higher incomes, and so on. You don't want to be equal to men when it comes to the potential for immorality. Well, that's just silly. We're equal to men. Can men be evil? Yes. Therefore, women can be evil. No. It's such a spastic, idiotic con job. And I won't do it. Like, I'm not going to play these stupid games. I just think it's ridiculous. You want to be equal to men? Great. Okay, then you get full moral autonomy and you're responsible for everything you do, just like men. One of the greatest things about being a white male is nobody gives you any excuses at all. Nobody gives you any excuse. I mean, if some guy annihilates his entire family, a strangulation, which is Lindsay Clancy's modus operandi, strangulation is considered like one of the most heinous ways to kill someone, right? You're face to face. You're looking in their eyes as the light goes out. You're choking. You can feel their neck bones and the hyoid twist and snap. And I think she strangled the youngest first and then had to chase around. I think one of the other kids, maybe the eldest, I think went into the dad's office to try and call the dad to get him, and she just caught him down. And I mean, that's horrendous. It's bad enough to murder anyone, let alone children, let alone your own children, but through strangulation, my God. Absolutely monstrous beyond words. Absolutely monstrous. Beyond words. And if a man annihilates his own family, there's not a lot of, men won't rush to his defense. Could have been me, bro. Nope, we don't say that. We don't say that. We want to string him up. Why has Buster Browns, as the memorable mayor says, of Amityville in Jaws. It was her middle child, Dawson, who struggled the most, he says, yeah. I am well, thank you. Just get your comments here. So, yeah, it is demonic. And also it's interesting with Lindsay Clancy, of course, that she claimed to hear this deep voice telling her to harm her children or to save her children through death and through her own, I believe I can fly from the second story, landing in a wheelchair for the rest of her life, it seems. But this deep voice that told her to do these terrible things never showed up till after. She never talked about it with anyone until after the murders. Oh, yeah, no, I heard these voices. Yeah. Oh, it's the voices. It's the voices. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Female evil. According to the Center for Disease Control, almost 24% of all relationships experience some level of violence. 50% of domestic violence cases involve mutual violence. In the other 50% of domestic violence cases, the violence was non-mutual. In relationships where the violence was non-mutual, one side, not the other, almost 70% of the violence was perpetrated by the woman. That's right. Eve, thank you very much. Thank you very much. In other words, in almost 7 out of 10 cases of mutual violence, the batterer, no, that's not right. Non-mutual violence, the batterer was a female. Murder and homicide. Men commit 85 to 90% of known homicides. Firearms are used in roughly 3/4 of cases overall. Women use guns less often. Under half the time, though, guns are still their most common weapon. After guns, women more often use knives, blunt objects, or personal force. Now, knives are a horrendous way, of course, because, right? Janet Leigh in the shower. Right? That's horrendous because, it's very personal. Poison is rare overall, under 0.5% of murders, but women are about 7 times more likely than men to use it. And I talked about this on X. When it first became possible through chemistry to figure out if somebody had been poisoned, a lot of women got caught who formerly would get away with it. So poison is rare, but women are about 7 times more likely than men to use it. Drowning is also relatively elevated among female offenders. Female serial killers are about 10 to 15% of the total. Historically, poisoning is their leading method. About half of cases, victims are often family or people under their care, right? You've heard these things, I'm sure, with nurses, right? Domestic violence. Behavioral surveys often show women perpetrating physical aggression at rates equal to or higher than men. Non-reciprocal violence, 70%, as we said. Men and women report comparable rates of initiating physical aggression. In some younger samples, women initiate more often. A woman's own prior aggression is one of the strongest predictors of her later victimization. So, spanking in children, infants and toddlers. This is largely mothers, right? About 10% are spanked at 9 to 10 months, 15% by 12 months, 25% by 15 months, 40 to 45% by 18 to 20 months. It's higher. This is just what people report, right? Over 5% of mothers of 3 months old babies report spanking them. Hitting them. Hitting! It's not spanking, it's hitting. Nearly 30% of mothers of children under 2 report spanking in the last year. In some older surveys, about a little over a third of infants under the age of 1 experienced some form of corporal punishment in the previous year. Hitting babies. Hitting babies. Mothers versus fathers at the age of 3, 52.8% of mothers are hitting versus of the hitting, 52.8% of mothers, 43.9% are fathers. By the age of 5, it's 45.7% of mothers versus just a little over a third of fathers. Mothers consistently report higher rates of spanking than fathers, a 10 to 20% point gap. Child abuse, women make up a slight majority of unique perpetrators in official U.S. data, 52% female, 47% male. The pattern is driven heavily by neglect. Biological mothers predominate. For SA, of children, females account for only 7 to 8% of substantiated perpetrators overall, rising to about 20% for victims aged 2 or younger. Child murder, slightly more than half of filicide offenders overall are male across longer-term U.S. data. For infants, mothers and fathers kill at roughly comparable rates. Killing of newborns is overwhelmingly committed by mothers. Right, mothers are more strongly associated with the deaths of the very youngest children and more often used as asphyxiation or smothering. And this is the big question which we're still working on here at the Free Domain Intergalactic Head Office, which is sudden infant death syndrome. Is it just mom smothering? There are some strong indications. Abortion, recent U.S. figures, approximately 1.1 to 1.13 million clinician-provided abortions per year. Since Roe v. Wade, more than 65 million abortions in the U.S., mid to high 60 millions as of the mid-2020s. The decision is made by the woman in the large majority of cases. And this is one of the most numerically significant forms of lethal agency exercised primarily by women. Women, since Roe v. Wade worldwide, have killed more babies in the womb than men have killed anyone across all of human history and all of the wars. And men are waking up to female corruption. Thank heavens. We can't solve the problem of the cycle of violence if we deny that half the human race is capable of immense evil against the helpless. Sexual violence against men by women. So here's where we have to run our tongue over the delightful term, the challenging term, the exciting term, made to penetrate. So this is a man who is terrorized or forced into sexual activity. And this can happen, of course. The man can gain an erection even in a state of fear. It is a physical response to certain kinds of stimuli. So a man can, there's women who actually achieve orgasm through being raped, and this can happen that men can be forced to penetrate. Roughly 1 in 9 to 1 in 14 men report being made to penetrate by someone else over their lifetime. Absolute estimates range from about 5.5 million to more than 12 million men. In more recent larger figures, this reaches roughly to 10 to 11% of the male population. The majority of these male victims, around 70% or higher, report only female perpetrators. And given that the number of men who want to complain about being attacked by women in this kind of way is not high, I assume that the numbers are far higher, and so on, right? False allegations. Grape. Strict studies found false allegation rates between roughly 2 and 10% of reported cases. Lisak et al. Will put all of the notes in the show here. 5.9% of reports over a 10-year university sample met the threshold for false allegation. Even at the lower end, absolute numbers are not trivial given the severe consequences for the accused. Directions overwhelmingly female to male. So this is horrendous. There's a case to be made that being accused of this kind of crime is worse than being the victim of this kind of crime. Because, of course, if you're the victim, you get massive amounts of support and sympathy and so on. If you're falsely accused of this, then your life is destroyed and you end up in jail, where this is probably going to happen to you anyway, repeatedly. So there's a case to be made that the false allegations are worse than the crime itself. So this is so common, SA in divorce. It's got SAID, SAID or SAID, is an acronym for it. In one Canadian family law sample, only 23% of sexual/physical abuse allegations were substantiated. Another 23% were judged likely intentionally false. Intentionally false allegations rose to about 12% in cases involving custody or access disputes. U.S. court data, mothers' child SA claims against fathers were accredited or proven in only about 15% of cases. Australian family court, fully contested, judges believe the allegations in only 14% of cases and found risk of sexual harm in about 12% of accusations. Horrendous. Sexual abuse by teachers. Student surveys, roughly 10% of students experience some form of educator sexual misconduct by later grades. More recent surveys of recent high school graduates find 12 to 17%. Contact abuse is lower, about 1%. In recorded arrest/disciplinary samples, female educators accounted for 13 to 25% of offenders. Again, this is reported, and a lot of men wouldn't report this. Women in political power. European politics, 1480 to 1913, queens ruled in about 18% of reigns. After accounting for selection, the polities led by queens were 27 to 39 percentage points more likely to participate in war than those led by kings. Baseline war rate of 30%. Married queens showed higher rates of aggressive participation in war. So the idea, and it's a wild thing, and you see these women, these sort of fried dopamine, haywire, TikTok-brained women, like taking ice and hurling them into bathtubs because they're just so angry. They're just so angry. It's like, oh my God. It's wild to me. I mean, women got everything they wanted and more. Women got everything they wanted and more over the last 100 years. Women got everything they wanted and more. If you're angry when you got everything you wanted, something's wrong with what you wanted. Something is wrong with what you wanted if you're angry because you got everything you wanted. It's like the people who, I really want to win the lottery. I won the lottery. I'm enraged that I won the lottery. Oh. And of course, you can see this kind of stuff. No, I'll get back to that. I will get back to that. So here is the diary entry of a pioneer woman from March the 16th, 1842. I'm not going to do this in my standard Valley Girl voice. Diary entry of a pioneer woman from March 16th, 1842. Wednesday the 16th. Rose about 5 o'clock. Had an early breakfast. Got my housework done. Up about 9. Baked 6 more loaves of bread. Made a kettle of mush and have now a suet pudding and some beef boiling. My girl has ironed and I have made out to put my clothes away and set my house in order. May the mercy of the merciful be with me through the expected scene. 9 o'clock p.m. was delivered of a son. Can you imagine one of these women who complained about their lives going back in time to that? Can you imagine? This is a woman whose baby is hanging on by his teeth to the inner umbilical and he's scrabbling down the placenta like some guy sliding down a glacier. And this is what she's doing on the day she has a baby. May the mercy of the merciful be with me through the expected scene. I'm going to say that at wordwardebate.com. How is that even remotely possible that people can complain when they've got everything they want? Asymmetry in relationships. Women exercise primary control over whether a relationship begins and continues. Men propose, women dispose. Men initiate most approaches and cover the majority of early dating costs, 70 to 80%. Women control or strongly influence 70 to 85% of household consumer spending. Adding a female partner, and especially children, substantially raises household costs. Raising one child to 18 costs roughly $300,000 in direct expenses. So women control most of what happens. If you want to know why men are the way they are, ask women throughout our evolution. Women's choices have carved the shape of men. Men, masculinity, is the shadow cast by the female choices of who to breed with. So women, the average man who's not a rock star just can't imagine what the even reasonably attractive woman, what her life is like. Like we can't conceive of it. Adoption comes with its own challenges. On divorce, women initiate roughly 69% of divorces in heterosexual U.S. marriages, range across studies 65 to 70%. It's higher still in some college-educated samples and when the wife has greater relative earnings. I want a man to be equal to me. I want a man who makes more than me. Stated reasons for divorce often center on emotional dissatisfaction or growing apart than ongoing physical danger. See, I don't know if this is just a women thing. Maybe men think this too. Marriage is not about your happiness in the day-to-day scenario. Yeah, it's really not. This is a kind of narcissistic hedonism. Marriage is about what's best for your children. That's all it is. It's not for your emotional fulfillment. It's not for your intimacy and a sense of belonging and wholeness. It's not eat, pray, love, India shit. Marriage is about what's best for your children. And what's best for your children, are you ready for it? I'm going to be loud. Just get ready. What's best for your children is just stay fucking married. That's really what's best for your children. Stay fucking married. Infinitely better for your children. Infinitely better for your children. Don't like it? Suck it up, buttercup. It's not about you. Do you think... Do you think that... I'll make it, I promise. Do you think that I wake up in the morning and I say, philosophy is just like totally there to just make me happy. Like it's just supposed to make me buoyant and fill my man tits with helium joy. That's really all. I gotta ride this Pegasus of infinite testosterone magical happiness to the sunny land of butterflies and hoas. It's a new exhibit that's opened up in Ontario. Oh my God! Philosophy is about telling the truth until about 8 minutes before they kill you and then saying, okay, I'll back off for a little bit. I'm back for some truth. Oh, the pitchforks around. Okay, backing off a little bit. I'm here with some more truth. Oh, lasers on the forehead. Okay, backing off a little bit. Philosophy is not about my happiness. It's about what's right and good and true. We've lost all sense of subjugation to rules higher than our own clitoris size. Do you know that in some word games, the word clit is actually acceptable? Like you can, and I've said to my wife, finally, I found it! Well, it's not moving. It's not Roman in the gloaming. It is a wild thing. Marriage is a duty that you engage into for the benefit of your children. Divorce is catastrophic for children. Divorce is abusive and traumatic for children. And of course, if your life is in immediate physical danger, if you're being beaten up, okay, I get all of that. Then get divorced. And then sit in a dark fucking room by yourself for about a year and figure out why you married a violent guy or girl. Maybe just try that. That's all I'm saying. Also, you know what's really bad for children in general, statistically? Ooh, yeah, that's right. Ooh, that's right. It is step-parents. Hey, you got some girls? Don't have an adult male who's not related to them in the household except to fix your fucking furnace. Danger! 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 So I do feel that the world is kind of waking up to what I've been screaming about, these last many decades. And unfortunately, it takes an Aztec fucking sacrifice of 3 innocent little children, one of whom was an 8-month-old baby, for people to say, you know, I just had a thought. I just had a thought, so to speak. I just had a thought. You know, I wonder if it's at all possible that women can be evil. Now, of course, we all know why you didn't call women evil throughout human history. Because if you call women evil, well, they won't bear your children. Because they close ranks, right? Women close ranks. You can see this happening with Lindsay Clancy and so on. Former Kentucky cheerleader has pleaded guilty to killing her newborn baby and stuffing him in a trash bag in her closet, but claims she was under emotional stress. 22-year-old Laken Snelling has admitted to killing her newborn baby by depriving him of oxygen. I was under a lot of emotional stress, and my baby came unexpectedly. And instead of helping him, I ended his life, and afterwards I cleaned up and didn't tell anyone, she said in court. She has pleaded guilty to manslaughter, abuse of a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and concealing the birth of an infant. Gotta tell you, it's quite a long way from her promo photo to how she looks on the stand. Amy Teresa on X wrote, "Sorry, but when your mom is prone to psychotic breaks, you know it, and so does half the neighborhood. It's not something you can conceal at will. She will have episodes in public and attack and verbally assault and terrorize strangers. On the reg," means on the regular, "and you will spend half your life trying to clean up the fallout." Patrick had never had to account for Lindsay's behavior. She had never behaved in a manner that anyone else on earth would ever found slightly odd or off, let alone crazy, psychotic, or divorced from reality. I can break out of the tweet read for a moment. I can absolutely confirm this. I would sometimes get phone calls. I used to live across from the Don Mills Mall, when it was a mall, and I used to get phone calls from the mall security saying, "Your mother needs you to come and pick her up." And it's because she did something insane at the mall, and I, at the age of 11 or 12 or 13, would have to troop my way over to the mall and pick up my mother, so It is absolutely true. James, I see you there. I'll just finish this tweet read. So, yeah, when they're crazy, and my mother was not psychotic. She didn't hallucinate, but she was crazy. And you can't hide it. You can't hide it. So this Amy goes on to write, she, Lindsay Clancy, had her full driver's license and a car. All the knives at home were kept in the knife block in the open. They had fire lighters, a stove, razors in the shower, fuel tanks and gas in the garage, an axe for chopping wood, cupboards full of poisons and chemicals that could easily kill a witch, or at least get you as high as a kite by huffing them. This is not the house of someone who's having psychotic episodes, who is concerned that she may be a danger to her children, or whom her family attempted to restrain or prevent from harming herself or anyone else in any way whatsoever. She wasn't sick, says Amy. There was nothing wrong with her other than maybe mild insomnia, and the lethargy and enemy that comes with being a rich, boring, spoilt, and selfish. See you next Tuesday. She's not bipolar or psychotic. She's just smart enough to say what she needs to say to avoid prison and stay in the same cushy mental health retreat she's been in for almost 4 years, at least until the appeals process is exhausted, at which point she will leave. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. James, hopefully I got your doc fairly okay. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, no, your treatment of the doc was fantastic. There's just something I wanted to mention that I didn't get to include because, I mean, I was running short on time and it was a bit muddy for me. Like I was trying to press grok for it. So it has to do with mass murderers and the, the, the assignment of psychosis or non psychosis psychiatric indicators to these people who kill. So what it turns out is that for men, psychotic signs and symptoms occur at about 12.5% of that population. And non-psychiatric psychiatric or neurological conditions is about 17.1%. For women, it's just about doubled. And so, when I saw that come out of Grok, at first I'm like, you know, I'm just, we just did all this research on the Lindsay Clancy stuff and all the postpartum depression stuff that's floating around. And, and of course, looking into it, it's, as we talked about on Wednesday, not. I mean, I'm not again, all dear caveats apply to me, not an expert, blah, blah, blah. But, she was fine after the birth. And then when, maternity leave ended, she started getting anxious, right? So, in my completely unprofessional opinion, doesn't seem like postpartum depression to me. And so everyone's jumping on this as an excuse to sort of give Lindsay this out of this thing. There's this horrible, horrible, horrible thing she did to her children. And so I'm looking at these stats, here, and I was trying to press grok, like, is there anything around this? But I mean, it just seems like even for women who commit mass murder, which, by the way, it's defined as 3 or more. So Lindsay Clancy is technically, according to that definition,
but they don't include abortions in that, right?
I would not say that they do. No,
I'm sure
no,
they don't.
completely. I'm pretty sure. I mean, of course, I don't have the actual answer, but I seriously doubt it. But yeah, so I mean, they're basically saying, the majority of men who are mass murderers, who everyone would say is evil and deranged, don't show these psychosis and the non-psychotic psychiatric symptoms. But the majority of women, because for psychotic women, it's 25.7%, a quarter, and then for the non-psychotic psychiatric women, it's almost 30%. So over half have this, I mean, granted, psychosis can be, I'm sure more observed in some ways, like the actual crazy, they're not clear thinking. They just sort of go around the bend. Grok's explanation for this, and it's probably just echoing some narrative, and maybe it's actually true, was, well, the number of women are so small and it's the very extreme end of the murdering spectrum. And I mean, men are more violent. I get that. So maybe there's some explanation that makes it hang together, but it just sort of got me thinking, like, man, they're kind of given these labels, that kind of say, oh, your brain is broken, so you're not really fully responsible. And so I found that kind of suspicious, but I couldn't substantiate it, so I couldn't really get into the depresso. But I wanted to mention that because it's really interesting.
Yeah. It also, I find it fascinating, James, when the women say the system failed her. It's like, she was supposed to be the system of protection for her children. I think that system failed them. And there is no particular, again, I'm not a psychiatrist, obviously, but as far as I understand it, there's no particular mechanism by which Psychosis means you don't have any morals at all.
Mm, right.
I mean, that would be something like demonic possession, which I think we're not going to go on that journey, right? So just because somebody's psychotic doesn't mean that they don't have any morality to them. Because what I find fascinating, and I am not an expert again, and tell me what you think, James. I'm interested. Um, so let's say that Lindsay Clancy had an inoperable brain tumor that nobody knew about. Then, for whatever reason, it broke down her executive function and it messed with her head and whatever, gave her horrible visions and took over her personality. We can imagine some scenario where some horrible brain disease or brain tumor or something like that did that, but then she'd keep getting worse, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, you observed, and I would agree with this, that she wasn't acting cuckoo bananas on the stand. She was there.
No, and 2 days after she was interviewed, and the psychiatrist found her pretty lucid, pretty rational, and so on. So
Yeah.
I don't quite understand how it's possible for someone to just be crazy and then sane again. I mean, my mother went crazy; she didn't become sane again. Of course, I'm not trying to judge everything by my mother, but I've seen some I've seen some stuff, man. And I mean, let me ask you this about your parents or anyone you know that, James, people who've gone kind of nuts or people who've gone kind of, even if they're just kind of narcissistic or something like that, do they just get better?
I mean, no, I mean, in the case of my parents, father being fairly pretty ragey guy, and certainly you could apply narcissist to him as well. I mean, if anything, he sort of stayed the same or got worse. And there's another fellow who came to mind who's much more on the much more unhinged spectrum. I'm not going to go into more details on that, but you would know who I'm talking about here. He just you know, just pops up again every time from time to time, and it's just like, oh, this guy, we is just unhinged. He just won't stay away, and he'll go away for a while, and he comes back, and it's just, it's there's no reasoning with him, and he's not gotten better over the years for
No, and
sure.
there's a guy, he hasn't emailed me for a while, but there was a guy who used to email me 100 times a day.
We're talking about the same guy, I think.
No, it's a different guy.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
This is a guy
I
you
take
don't
that
know.
back.
He's never shown up on the show. And,
Okay.
whatever. I mean, if it makes him feel better, but I'm not scanning these things and not one of them I expecting to be like, I think I may have gone a little overboard there, Steph. I'm gonna dial this back a little because I know you're like, it's never gonna happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've
Yeah.
known people who've been very disturbed over the course of my life. They don't get better. And this idea that somehow the husband was to blame or the husband was going to fix it. How the living hell is the husband supposed to fix something that a wide variety of well-trained people handing out fistfuls of medication can't fix? When someone's going nuts, you either get out or you hang along for the ride. Don't imagine you can fix it, in my humble opinion. I've seen lots of people try. We've heard lots of people on the show try. It no worky. It no worky. And it is one of the great horrifying mysteries of life as a whole, which used to be answered by religion, and then it was answered by incarceration in these horrible asylums, and then it was answered by, what do they do, ice baths and things like that, just crazy stuff that they've tried to do, and then it was answered by meds, and so on. People lose their minds and do terrible things. And the cause, I mean, I would love a philosophical examination of these things, but it's not predictable. That's lots of being, I got to read the list of meds, which is kind of nuts, right? Lots of people are on those meds, don't do evil things. Lots of evil people do evil things who are not on meds. There are lots of psychotics who are not brutal and violent. And there are people who are brutal and violent who aren't psychotics. We look for this intersection of the planets and think it explains things,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Yeah.
think without moral philosophy, you can't. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and just as another example in that, I think it's is it Gabor Mate, that did this study or this examination, or someone along like him, where the inmates in prisons, like just about every one of them to a man, had experienced some kind of brutal abuse or SA or something
Yeah, yeah.
terrible in their childhood. But, you know, there are many, 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 many more people in the world, that experience really terrible childhoods that do not turn to criminality. And this is another data point on that.
Yeah, I mean, without the magic of free will, I mean, James, have you ever had an evil thought? Are you having
Is that
one
an evil
right
laugh?
now
No,
for me putting
no,
you on the
no,
spot? Now, I
no. I mean,
myself, of
yes.
course, being the inveterate, bald-headed choir boy, have never had one shadowy thought cross my entire mental complexion in the entire history of my immortal existence. I would
Oh,
say,
yes. I mean,
how
certainly.
many times a day do you catch yourself going, well, that's a little nuts in my in your head? I would say, at least for me, it's half a dozen times a day. I'm like, it's not intrusive thoughts because I'm not like, I could, like this old, I could shave this way, up and down, or side to side and just slash myself to ribbons. Like, I'm not saying it's that kind of stuff, but every now and then I'm just like, like the other day I was at the store and I was like, I could just punch this guy in the head who's right ahead of me. Like I just could. It's not like I'm going to or I'm about to, but doesn't everyone have these kind of little nutty thoughts where you're just like, this dog, this kind of yappy. I bet you I could punt him at least 100 yards. Of course, I'm not going to kick a dog or anything like that, but just thoughts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm nothing springing to mind immediately, but I know that I do. It's like every once in a while, it's like, oh, whoa, well, that's interesting. It's like I certainly could do that, but I mean, there's no right. I mean, in my right mind, of course, and I am. I would hope. No, but I mean, I would never actually do that. You know.
No,
Um,
of course, nobody's saying. But I think that this is something that comes out of Crime and Punishment, the great novel, which is that the
uh,
guy Raskolnikov, he just starts with an idea and he just plays with the idea, right? But you're never supposed to take these ideas seriously, right?
mhm,
So his basic idea is that there are lots of people who do lots of terrible things and we cheer them on, right? Like, I mean, Napoleon is a great man of history and he shot cannon fire into people who were protesting, right? And he's like,
right.
well, why should it be the case that this horrible old pawnbroker should hang on to all of this money and prey upon the young when I could just kill her, take the money, and disperse it to the poor and help people and give it to people who, my friend Razumhin, who is needs to stay in school, or I could stay in school. Like, and so, of course, you can think about these ideas. It's this sort of an interesting idea, but you don't sit there and go, yeah, but no, but what if really?
Hmm.
Right. So little odd thoughts will go across my mind whatsoever, like, I don't know, filleting my microphone or something like that, because spitters are quitters. But I mean, I'm not going to do it. But if these thoughts flit across your mind and you're like, okay, hang on a sec. No, but what if? No, like
Mm.
really, what? Like what if? What if? And you let the thoughts go by. They're kind of amusing. They're kind of funny. They're not serious and so on. It's just the brain doing its creative, misfiery, whatever stuff. And it's when you start to entertain them as but what if? Maybe. But what if, right? And so it's like, I mean, most people at some point have been mad enough at someone else in their life to wish them not being around in whatever way we want to say, right?
Mm.
Like you hear people in conflicts, oh, I could just kill that guy or whatever, right? And, that's just a thought, right? And what you don't want to do is you don't want to say to that thought, whoa, hey, come back here. No, seriously, tell me that again. Oh, I could just kill that guy. No, again. Oh, I could just kill that guy. Like don't bring them back and start to say, no, but really, but what if? I mean, let's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
play with the idea. Let's just think about it. No. You let them go by like a clown car. A clown car with balloons and inflatable shit in the back. You just go by. It goes by. That's what you let it go by. And like, hey, that was fun. So whoa, come back here. No, but what if? What if? And I think when you start to call them back and say, okay, but I mean, let's just game it out. It's like, no, don't do any of that. Don't do any of that, right?
Mhm.
Don't do any of that. Because when you start going down that road, then who knows where it ends. And I do think that there's a little choice at the beginning of things, right? You say, oh, I'm so angry, I could I could murder that guy, right? And then you're like, okay, that's just a thought or whatever. You're just getting stuff off your chest. Although, of course, it's very true that there's no such thing as catharsis, right? This idea that you've got all this anger pent up and then you go and hit pillows or throw your ice in the bathtub and you feel better. It's like, nope, that's not a real thing. There's no study that ever shows that acting out anger makes you less angry. In fact, what it does is it clears the neural pathways for you to be more angry. You're actually making yourself worse by doing that kind of stuff. But there is a mystery, of course, at the beginning of things. So if there's someone who was like, oh, these kids are driving me crazy, I'd be better off without them. Like, I mean, that's just, I never had that thought. I have a lovely daughter and all of that. But, I can understand. She was also delightful company. And part of that is, I think, good parenting. And part of that is just good luck. Because, some kids are like crazy colicky and all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, I regret having kids. This is no fun. Like, okay, so that's a thought. You let it go by. Let it just, like a bird flying through a barn. Off it goes. You don't call it back. You don't call it back and interrogate it and say, but what if? No, really, come on, let's think about it. Maybe. And then you start to go from a sort of crazy random thought to starting to give it weight and depth and a plot and a script. And then it's just like, I think that there's this little part where people just do that kind of stuff. Sorry if that makes sense at all.
No, it does. And I actually did think of a couple of examples. One was a bit more
me?
benign.
Did they involve me asking for a rewrite 7 minutes before the show starts? You're going to act them out next time we see each other.
Yeah. No, but I mean, one of them, and I'm sure I can't be the only person who's thought of this. You get some guy, you're on the road, and there's just someone who, just ask me out to dinner first, please. You're tailgating you so closely. And, it's like, there's a temptation. Okay, well, you know what? Let's see how much you really like my bumper, and just go,
Yeah, you go slower. Some guy's tailgating you, and everybody has that impulse to just go slower, right?
Or go slower quite rapidly would be the occasional temptation I've had. Actually,
I saw a video of it was on the highway, and it was a car totally being tailgated by another car, and then it drove and it drove and it drove, and then it just darted to one side because there was another car that had stopped. Had some sort of failure. The car had stopped, and then the car right behind him just completely smashed into that car. And look, I don't approve. I think that's, like you just have to, the road rage is a thing that, kind of happens, but you don't want to do things like that because that's going to get people killed and so on. But yeah, everyone's had that. Everyone's had that thought.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other one, maybe a bit more benign, but definitely related to like more of a family thing. So, just so happens that I'm like basically on the list of all the scammers and, house painters and who knows what of the state where my father lives, right? So I get all of these local things with my number. It's just been conflated in the records, and I should just give up the number, but I haven't yet. So I had this thought one day: what if I went ahead and just basically gave them my father's number? Go look it up and everything. And I know that's not a big thing. It's kind of funny. It's like, yeah, but no. I mean, then I have to find the number, and then who knows what. I mean, I doubt anything would have come of it. But it's like it's just. I mean, I could like really think about it. Like, okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'll. It's just like it's just no,
Yeah, just no. Like I remember once sitting in a plane and thinking, what if I just start yodeling? Little old lady, ooh, right? What if I just start yodeling? And that's a thought that's just kind of amusing, but you don't sit there and say, no, but really, what if I did? Would that be so bad? Wouldn't be the end of the world. Could be amusing, could go viral, could be fun. Like, you just don't entertain that stuff. Just let it go past like birds flying past.
Yep.
Do not catch those butterflies and give them deeper wings. All right. I appreciate that. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, I just wanted to mention that thing about the stats and the the excuses that are floating around, or giving the excuses to these people who just do these terrible things. Like you mentioned before, there's no blood test or stuff for a lot of this stuff, and
it's hormones. Well, shouldn't they show up in a blood panel then? Right.
Yeah.
All right. So appreciate that. Thanks, James. And again, thanks for the great research. I meant to pass it off as mine, but you had to call in, didn't you? Now I'm having another intrusive thought. All the medications prescribed to Lindsay Clancy, and then we will get to the callers. September 15th, 2022. Sertraline, 25 milligrams from Jennifer Tufts, MD. October 21st, 2022. Lorazepam. Is that marzipan? No. 0.5 milligrams, Jennifer Tufts, MD. October 26th, 2022. Benadryl. Isn't that the stuff that took down Jordan Peterson? I think that stuff's pretty addictive. Not medical advice, look it up for yourself, but Jennifer Tufts. October 26th, Lorazepam. 1 milligram. So it went from 0.5 to 1. Jennifer Tufts, October 26, 2022, buspirone. And if that makes you like Gary Busey, you are in trouble. 5 milligrams, Jennifer Tufts. November 2nd, 2022, lorazepam, 0.5 milligrams, Jennifer Tufts. November 9th, 2022, buspirone again. And we're back to 5 milligrams, Jennifer Tufts. November 16th, 2022, trazodone, 50 milligrams. Kayvon Izadpana, MD. November 21st, 2022, fluoxetine, 10 milligrams. Julie Paul, registered nurse, CNP. November 25th, 2022, I won't read the names, but it's a variety of, I think, mostly female doctors and nurse practitioners, I think they are. What were we at? November 25th. Zolpidem, 5 milligrams, November 25th. Mirtazapine, 7.5 milligrams, November 25th. Clonazepam, 0.5 milligrams, so that's 3 on the same day. But there's more. November 30th. Quetiapine, 25 milligrams, December 6th. Diazepam, December 7th. Diazepam, December 7th. Quetiapine, December 9th. Diazepam, December 13th. Diazepam, December 16th. Lamotrigine, December 19th. Diazepam, December 19th. Quetiapine, ER, 300 milligrams. Seems like a lot. December 21st. Quetiapine, 100 milligrams. December 22nd, quetiapine, 25 milligrams. January 5th, 2023, leading up to the murders. Trazodone, January 5th. Lorazepam, January 9th. Diazepam, January 12th. Trazodone, January 13th. Diazepam, January 16th. Diazepam, January 16th. Amitriptyline, 10 milligrams. January 19th. Diazepam, January 23. Diazepam. Woo! Yeah, sorry, Jordan Peterson, not that he was taken out, but I think he became addicted and had to be flown to Russia by his son-in-law to be put into a coma for a month because the withdrawals are apparently quite horrendous. So that's a lot. That's a lot of scattershot meds. Now, of course, I'm sure they've all been tested on breastfeeding women, all in combination. Of course they haven't. All right. Spencer, you called up earlier. Did you fix up any of your audio? We'll be back.
Oh God, hello.
You're starting off with a yawn. That's some powerful media presence, bro.
I'm pretty tired. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Stefan, your show fucking sucks. Jordan Peterson is better. Sargon is better. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing your preferences. I personally am a bit more of a chocolate than a vanilla kind of fellow. But hey, expressing preferences is a good thing. Free speech is delightful. All right. Dego. Dego. Are you on your voice, my brother?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, your screen just like inverted. It's like inverted 90 degrees now for some reason for me.
All right.
Well, anyway, do you want me to continue, or is that an issue that you're saying too?
No. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, so I've been mulling over something, kind of from that video you posted of "Don't force yourself to be good." Great video in general. I guess I just have some maybe fine tunings or questions regarding it.
Can you just give the brief thesis to refresh both the audience and myself?
Right. In general, the brief thesis is that um, do not like use philosophy or morality as a gun against your head to force you to do things, because then you lose free will and then it is no longer good. For example, if you have a moral belief that to lie is wrong, and you try to universalize that to everything, if you then if a waitress asks you if the coffee was good and in fact it was terrible and you answer honestly, you might be operating under that guise, but is that really the best thing to do in that situation? If that makes sense.
Okay, so go ahead. I always appreciate some refinements, so hit me up.
Okay, and this is a kind of trying this idea on for my own size, but I guess doing good as like a natural state. Um, I think, I mean, I only know my own body, but it seems to me that being good or doing good may be more natural for some than others. Um, like, for example, a hedonist, maybe what's natural for him potentially is to be a hedonist rather. And for that person who's a hedonist, he may choose or wants to force himself to do things that he knows are good, like exercise or stop using drugs or something. And it may not be natural to him, and but it's I guess, the right way to go. Um, I suppose for that person potentially. And for and I think the idea of discipline or forcing yourself to do things is, I think, a way to, um, I guess, get yourself out from a bottom or get yourself out from a down position where you're maybe a hedonist or maybe unhealthy. You force yourself or you use discipline as a tool to force yourself to become good or become better. And I think that once you are, I guess, in this hypothetical better form, then at that point, there needs to be less requirement for utilizing, I suppose, self force. And I think tying into all of this is, I think, what's the most important part is to, if you are to use discipline or quote force in order to do these things that, like, for example, running to get to lose weight or eating healthier, that you ensure your premises are correct before enforcing discipline or enforcing these um, standards upon yourself. Does that make sense? That idea? My confusion or counter idea?
Sorry, you're saying that there's some room for discipline in life, but you don't want to force yourself to do everything.
Well, that's right, but I think sometimes you do want to force yourself to do things.
No,
Like,
that's why I just said that. I just said there's some room for
okay,
discipline in your life, right? You have to make sure you're listening to what I'm saying if we're going to have a
sorry,
convo,
yes,
right? So
yes,
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 for sure. So you want an Aristotelian mean, right? You don't want to be forcing yourself to do things all the time, but there are things in life that you have to do that you don't want to do. You have to do all taxes or whatever it is, or even sometimes you may, like there's times when I have booked myself to do a show or an interview and I have a headache. I mean, right. So sometimes you just have to do things that you're not quite ready for, you don't really want to do. So yeah, there's some realm where discipline is important. But in general, you don't want to force yourself to do things in life because then who are you if you're just kind of following orders or being programmed by philosophy as opposed to having that dance between spontaneity and curiosity and discipline and enjoyment and so on. I mean, if somebody just hates exercising, then you have to sort of figure out why or find something that's more fun for you to do that involves moving or something like that. Um, so there's times when you use discipline um, because it's just necessary, but you don't want to base your life on just making yourself do stuff, if that makes sense.
yeah, and it definitely does. And I think the refinement to the idea is what I wrote on the bottom here, where that you ensure that your premises are correct before going forward with that discipline. Like, for example, if I wanted to, you know, if I, for some reason, the how of, all right, I need to do a 30-day fast or something like that. It's like, okay, but why? Is that premise really useful? Is that really a good, like, why there? Or, for example, like another premise could be a more reasonable premise, you could say, is, oh, I'm getting a little, chubby. I should probably maybe cut some calories or do a little bit more exercise. Okay, that why, that premise seems to be correct. So there, at that point, that may be a time to enforce discipline if it's not effortless, that is.
But discipline is just deferred hedonism, right? So I exercise because I enjoy feeling strong. I enjoy playing pickleball. I enjoy running. I enjoy hiking, and also I don't want to be attractive for my wife, and blah 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 blah. So there's times when I don't feel like exercising, but you know the old thing, which is that if you don't exercise, it's just suffer now or suffer later. So if you don't
Right.
exercise, maybe things are more fun for you now. I mean, generally, people would rather sit on the couch eating cheesecake and watching a movie than, go sit on a bike machine and sweat their balls off. But if you just sit on the couch and eat cheesecake, then you suffer later when you're fat and whatever, your bladder is constantly pressed by visceral fat, and then you can't climb the stairs and your knees hurt, and it's just so. Discipline is just deferred hedonism. It's just taking the pleasure later that's greater.
All right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And sorry to interrupt, but I was just sort of
But
thinking about this today, which is this happens in conflicts. Like I'm sure most people have had in their life, and hopefully you haven't been that person. Just that asshole who can't. No, this is not you, obviously, but the asshole who just can't admit that he's wrong or she's wrong, and
oh yeah, yeah.
they can't admit fault. It doesn't matter, and we've had some of them on the show. None of you lovely listeners tonight. But I had a girl I dated, a woman I dated in my 20s, and just could never admit that she was wrong. And it just became tiring and all of that. And I ended up breaking up with her and so on, which was great. All the breakups that led to my wife were the best things in the planet for me. And just out of curiosity, a couple of years ago, I looked her up, and well, as far as I can tell, still single, never achieved the dreams that she wanted to achieve, and all of that. And it's like, okay, so you were right in the moment, right? You were every single conflict. You were right. You were right. You were right. I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong. Okay, so you got all of the pleasure or relief or lack of humiliation that maybe you experienced from being right, and then you're alone. And so you get the fun of being right, which is like a drug hit, but then no quality person wants to spend time with you because if you can never admit that you're wrong, that's a deranged perspective. We're all wrong from time to time. And it means that the other person then has to carry the entire weight of everything that you've done wrong, and they have to take the blame for the things that you've done wrong, which is like being in a relationship where the other people eat too much and you get fat. So even just saying, I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Oh, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. I mean, if it's not fun in the moment, right? And I don't like having to do it, I think, any more than anybody else does. But the consequence is terrible, because if you can't admit that you're wrong, you end up with nobody wanting to spend any time with you. And that's worse, isn't it?
Oh, it's certainly worse. Not only it's even worse than nobody wanting to spend time with you. If you're unable to admit you're wrong, you have no ability to calibrate and understand reality. You're always just part of it. And it's interesting that you actually just said all that, because I just had a conversation with a friend about a mutual friend that I'm kind of cutting out of my life right now, who is exactly like that. Exactly like that. Unable to admit they're wrong, always has to be the smartest guy in the room. And whenever you do prove him wrong in front of a quote jury of his peers, he'll just move goalposts or, belittle you in some way, in some ridiculous way. And
Oh, and
that just
COVID was all
engaging.
about that,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
COVID was all about that. Oh, if you believe that there was a lab leak theory, you're just a crazy conspiracy theorist. It's
Yeah.
like, that Fauci just suppressed that for the sake of being able to make money and have control. And people I mean, people will die before they would admit that they're wrong. It's a wild thing. People will
Oh
literally
yeah.
fucking die rather than admit that they're wrong. And I've seen a bunch of this over the course of my life. And of course, we know people online, they just can't admit that they're wrong, and they'd rather die. And I mean, it's really not that bad. Just admit that you're wrong. It's not the end of the world. But the problem is, if you don't admit that you're wrong, you end up being kind of abusive to other people. And then if you admit that you're wrong down the road, you have to go back and realize and see all the abuse that you committed. And that's too much for most people.
That's interesting. The rather die than admit that you're wrong kind of thing. That almost borders on religiosity in a way.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very true.
Well,
Or hyperpatriotism. Sorry, go ahead.
and I guess the reason I said that is because I would, um, I've met some atheists in my life, who are maybe like lower standards of whatever you may say, that maybe hedonistic atheists, or just kind of just lost people, I would say, not people who've arrived upon atheism due to actual thought about it, but kind of just arrived upon it due to as a way to be hedonistic. And yeah, I think that in some of those people's mind, they view whatever facts or whatever secular knowledge they happen to have as their religion, and they would die for their religion of that.
Well,
Now, that might be
atheists
as
don't
late.
really want to die for their, quote, irreligion. What they will do is they will definitely kill for the sake of their cult of statism, right? So I've had this complaint, so I'll keep it brief, with atheists for decades, which is they say, God doesn't exist. I'm like, okay, the government doesn't exist. What?
Yeah.
It's like, the government doesn't exist. It is a concept. It is an idea. It does not exist. And they're like, I remember atheists would send me a picture of the White House saying the government does exist. And I'm like, okay,
Oh,
so
wow.
God exists because I can send you a picture of a church. Would you accept that? No. The church
That's
doesn't prove
hilarious.
the existence of the thing. It's like, and you try to get atheists to accept that there's no such thing as government, and it is an infinitely more dangerous belief
Mm.
in the government than in Jesus Christ. Because if you believe in Jesus Christ, you don't have the power of taxation. You don't have the power to start wars. You don't have the power to jail people. You don't have the power to borrow on behalf of the unborn. You don't have the power to counterfeit money and destroy the entire culture and civilization. You just believe in Jesus and want to do good. It is much more dangerous to believe in the government than it is to believe in God, particularly for Christianity, maybe other religions, not so much, but Christianity for sure. And trying to tell atheists that they have a much more dangerous and false belief than Christians do, they cannot comprehend it. And exactly the same arguments they use against God would be used against governments, and they just short circuit. And they're so used to dominating amateur theists with arguments they didn't even invent themselves. God can't be both all-powerful and all-knowing. Yeah. All the way back to the pre-Socratics. But when you actually challenge their fetish about the government, they no likey, and they can't reason their way out of a wet paper bag.
Right? I mean, at that point, it's just functionally another religion, you could say.
Well, no, because religions, you can't compare it to Christianity, because Christianity can't raise my taxes, but the government sure can. Christianity can't
Certainly.
drive me to go to war, but the government sure can. Well, I'm almost aging out of that now. Dodged it the whole way through. But no, it's a much more dangerous, even if we say that Christianity is a dangerous belief system and, whatever, but it's still almost infinitely more dangerous to believe in the validity of the state, which is just a concept that is incredibly violent directly, and belief in that concept fuels that aggression. They cannot do it. And it's where my respect for atheists, I mean, they're just useful idiot for communists and socialists. So, and they don't even want to admit that. It's really, really sad.
Yeah, it certainly is. I realize this conversation got a little discursive off my original point, which I think you effectively answered, about the Aristotelian mean regarding discipline and as a method of doing good or producing good for yourself. And and I really think ensuring your premises are correct prior to trying to enforce or have discipline is extremely important.
Yeah, and
Um,
last thing I mention is that the way that I've used sort of discipline and sustainable happiness in what you're doing is, you start a fire. I mean, I worked up north. We did a lot of fire starting. And of course, the way that you do it is you get some newspaper and you get some kindling, and then you get the larger logs and so on. And so to me, willpower is the newspaper and the early kindling you use to get something started, but you can't keep the fire going with that. At some point, it's got to transfer to the bigger and heavier logs that are more sustainable. And, hopefully you don't have to do the gasoline squirt to get it going and so on, right? But so willpower is just there to get it going, but it's not there to sustain it. So, you just go to the gym sometimes if you don't feel like it, and it's there to just get you in the habit and keep it going. It's like the late, great Scott Adams used to say, like, if I can't go to the gym for whatever reason, or I don't even have any time, sometimes I'll just go to the gym, stand in the doorway, and then leave, just so I don't lose the habit of going to the gym. And so willpower can get you started, but it can't sustain you for too long, and you need to find a way to transfer that willpower to something that's more hedonistic. I enjoy working out. Now, I don't enjoy the actual act of muscle pulling because it's uncomfortable by definition, and I don't enjoy the bike machine and so on. I'd rather play sports, but there's some times where, it's raining or whatever and you can't. And so, I'm sitting there on the bike machine and I'm like, if this wasn't good for me, this would be like torture. Like this would literally be how you get information out of people, right? But I also know I feel great afterwards. I enjoy being in a strong, healthy body. And so it is just a matter, you just have to look a little over the horizon. You just have to see the crops in the seeds and it's all fun.
All right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So that's pretty much all I got. And yeah, I appreciate it, Stefan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we may get to Richard, but we have... Wait, did we already talk to this fella? Sorry. I have my distance glasses and I have my old dude reading glasses.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Yes, I'd like to talk about, continue the conversation about dark thoughts. So I'm someone, and this is actually relevant to medication that I've been taking all my life. So I deal with OCD. I was diagnosed with OCD in my childhood. I had a lot of intrusive thoughts growing up. Horrible intrusive thoughts.
Like what?
And I won't. I'd rather not go too into detail, but also, when it comes to, like, killing people, pushing people, like the temptation to do that, like, it's a thought. It's not, it's not pleasant to deal with, but it's something that I dealt with a lot growing up in my childhood, and I always feel really guilty or just paranoid
I'm so
after.
sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I apologize. Just as you start, I mean, I remember when a kid pushed. When I was in, I must have 5 or so, because my brother was already at boarding school, and I was on this big tall log that was horizontal in a playground, and a kid pushed me off, and I had fantasies about grabbing him by the feet. I still remember this very vividly: grabbing him by the feet and thumping him back and forward over my head so that he would hit the ground from both sides of his head or whatever, right? And, of course, I wasn't going to do it or whatever. I think I just called him a jerk and went to play somewhere else with my friends or whatever, right? But if you have those kinds of thoughts, and of course, we're just talking thoughts.
Yeah.
Why are they so
Exactly.
horrible?
That's right, because there's a lot of emotion behind them, and a lot of again, thoughts usually there's context with a lot of thoughts. So there's things which provoke thoughts. So as someone who's dealt with trauma, hadn't I've had some not very pleasant stuff happen to my childhood, but I digress. But a lot of that sort of sticks with you in your mind. It kind of just floats in your brain. So you know, I've I've seen domestic violence. I've seen heavy drinking from my dad. So growing up, sort of, and I've had some other stuff, but yeah, I think environment is quite a crucial factor, and it sort of forges the way how often these thoughts come up. So I
Okay,
like to
sorry to
think that
interrupt. So
when we're
what you mean is
born.
that you saw, and I'm really sorry about all of this, of course. So you saw drunken assaults and violence in the
Yeah,
home.
yeah, and I was also exposed to a lot of quite aggressive media, so like violent movies growing up.
Sort of at
Um,
what age?
7,
Yeah, I
6.
remember being at a sleepover and there was a horrible
Yeah,
vampire
I got.
movie on, and I remember seeing the vampire. I was very young, and I saw the vampire get the stake driven in and blood coming out of his mouth, and it's like,
Yeah.
I know. And I remember in boarding school, I was like 6 years old, and they put on an old Charlton Heston movie about zombies and the apocalypse, Omega Man, and so on. Absolutely horrifying. We used to like little stories about dogs and animals and cute stuff like that, and I'm hundreds of miles away from home in a strange environment, and watching a guy blow zombies up with hand grenades and stuff. It's just absolutely appalling stuff. And I still don't know.
May I
I'll never
ask?
know what happened with that particular selection, but it was purely sadistic. So yeah, the media stuff is pretty important, and I'm sorry about that too.
Yeah, so I'm just curious. Do you remember the feelings behind when you saw this zombie film? Were you excited? Were you horrified? Did
Yeah, I
you?
was horrified and I was frightened. And I remember because we all slept at a big dormitory, all of us kids at the boarding school. There's like 40 kids in this big long dormitory. And I remember, all of the kids sniffling because, 6-year-olds should not be exposed to giant zombie
So
death
why?
attack, ripping heads off movies and stuff like that. So yeah, I
So
do
why?
remember
Yeah.
being pretty appalled, horrified, frightened, and just like there's something fundamentally wrong with the world that would show me this.
So why is it for some people they react differently? Some people they almost get a morbid fascination and they kind of laugh and they kind of enjoy the gory violence. Why is it
Oh, it's
that?
because they can't be vulnerable. So if you have parents around who, if you're vulnerable, they will attack and mock you, then you have to create a false self that finds it cool and hip and funny in a way or whatever. So you have to rise above it, because if you show vulnerability, like if you have a parent who shows you some absolutely appalling horror movie, then if you say, I'm scared, oh, there's nothing to be scared of, kid, don't worry about it, it's no big deal, I don't want to sleep alone. Oh, it's just a movie. What are you being such a baby for? What are you being such a sissy for? So if you're vulnerable and you express your fear, your anxiety, your horror, then you're going to get mocked. So what you have to do is mock it in a way so that you don't get mocked, if that makes sense.
Well, actually, that wasn't really my experience growing up. I'm almost embarrassed
Hang
to
on,
admit
you were
that.
asking me why would some people, not your experience. Don't move
Oh
the
well,
goalposts on me, bro.
sorry. I'll tell you my experience. I'd
No,
always
you
had
said,
a
hang on. You said, why would some people?
yeah.
You said, why do people respond differently? Why would some people? And I said, here's a theory. And you said, well, that wasn't my experience. And that's fine. But at least acknowledge that you were asking for a general thesis rather than because if you'd said, why do I do it? I'd
Yeah.
have to ask you a bunch of questions first. But sorry, go ahead.
No,
I'm not
no, of
trying to
course,
nag
all right.
too much, but go ahead.
No, I should have worded the question right. I apologize. In my experience, I sort of have always, growing up in my teens, I sort of had a fascination with gore. So I was a bit of a goth kid growing up. So, I enjoyed the dark, kind of like moody music, the
Yeah,
kind of,
I wasn't so much with the moody music, but I definitely had a fascination with gore when I was in my early teens, for sure.
yeah, I've always wondered, like, why for me did was attracted to it? Or why was I pulled to it more than, why was I less horrified than other people? I've always wondered that.
All
And
right.
I still don't understand fully why that sort of fascinated me growing up.
Well, you were exposed to a lot of horror and violence, both real and simulated, from a very early age, right?
Hmm.
So you had to manage your reaction to that horror. So you said that your father showed you scary movies?
It actually wasn't my father. It was not very nice people online. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, so let's go a little further back. What was the stuff that you saw between your parents with the drinking and the violence, and how old were you?
Oh, that was just domestic violence growing up between my mum and my dad around s- um, 11, 12. Just my dad would be drinking heavily, slurring his words and shouting at my mum, and just kind of my mum would be sort of cowering. It wasn't very pleasant. And sometimes he'd shove her, and that was the kind of real first kind of physical violence the earliest form of physical violence I experienced as a child. And then after that,
Hang on. So
well,
before,
before,
sorry to interrupt, but before that, so before you were 11 or 12, your parents were not fighting in that kind of way or drinking. Is that right?
well, I don't really remember, to be perfectly honest,
You don't remember them or much of anything?
much of anything in my childhood. So I think 11 and 12 would be the earliest memory that I have of them sort of
Well, they
getting.
probably didn't go from lovey-dovey to drunken fighting.
Hmm.
So they almost certainly would have been as violent and maybe even more violent with the energy of youth when you were a baby, a toddler, and in the single digits.
I suppose I really can't tell. I mean,
No, I
my
get it.
memories
I
are
get it. You can't
quite
remember, but
fragmented.
trauma also interferes with the formation of memories. But if your earliest memories that you can remember are of drunken fights and shoves and assaults and so on, then, we can reasonably assume that that stuff was occurring earlier as well.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, okay. I'm happy to hear a theory by which people go from affectionate and loving to drunken and battling.
Hmm. Children, children. So I guess,
No, that's not a theory. A lot
well, let me
a lot. Hang
elaborate.
on. A lot of couples get closer and more loving. Like, I love my wife even more because I've seen how wonderful she is as a mother. So children do not cause couples to go from affectionate to drunken and violent.
I disagree, respectfully. I think
No,
it depends
I
on what.
didn't say it never happens. You got to be precise. It doesn't cause them to. It's not dominoes. If you get pushed off a cliff, you're going to fall, right? I mean, there's no choice after that. That's dominoes, right? But there's nothing innate in having children that makes parents violent towards each other. It doesn't cause it. I'm not saying it doesn't ever happen that the parents
I
get
was going to
violent. Hang on.
elaborate.
Hang on. Let me finish my thought before you start talking in my ear. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen that parents get violent after having children. I mean, I literally have been covering for the last week and a half the Lindsay Clancy case. And I just did a whole series at the beginning of the show about female violence. So I'm perfectly aware that sometimes after having children, people become violent, but it is not the having of children that makes them violent. So, for instance, if somebody's narcissistic and just wants to live for themselves, and then they have a child, and then the child demands that they stop living just for themselves and do what's best for the child, they're going to feel a lot of anger. But it's not the having of children that makes that anger. It's the narcissism that makes the anger. Because if having children made people angry, then everybody who had children would be angry, but they're not. Most people who have children are happy and delighted and thrilled, and there's occasional exasperation or whatever, but not sort of any sort of drunken assaults or anything like that. So it certainly is true that after having children, some people become aggressive and impatient, but it is not the having of children that causes that. It's the having of children plus being narcissistic or something else.
May I interject?
Yeah.
So I think, on a general basis, having children isn't going to make a couple violent, but I think it does depend bringing up the child and the difficulties that child arises. So I spoke quite late. I started speaking quite late, I think 4 years old, and I've been diagnosed with autism, and a lot of that was quite difficult for my parents. So I can only assume that having a child with mental health or whatever, some sort of disability, is a driving factor to tension or conflict within a couple.
So you're saying that your mental health issues drove your parents to drink and violence?
That's my theory, yes.
Well, that's a terrible theory, if you don't mind me saying so. I'm not saying I'm right. I just think that's a terrible theory. So first of all, let's look at cause and effect. Let's look at the other possibility that your parents were drunken and violent before you were born, and then after you were born, and their drunkenness and their violence and their selfishness and their lack of concern, consideration, empathy, and thoughtfulness towards their child meant that they didn't bother teaching you how to speak and how to learn and how to read and how to reason. That you kind of were raised, as a lot of children of alcoholics are, with significant amounts of neglect. And therefore, it's not, well, they drink because you only started speaking at the age of 4, but perhaps, just a possibility, just throwing it out there, that you only started speaking at the age of 4 because you were neglected by violent alcoholics.
That's a possibility, yeah.
And it certainly does go, okay, well, let's do another test. In your teenage years, when you face all of the challenges of dating and peer pressure and sports and school and growing bodies and all of that, did your parents give you lots of helpful advice, sit down and make sure that you understood things, and were they thoughtful towards all of the inputs that you needed to most successfully navigate your teenage years?
I'd say it was quite limited, but it was mainly from my mother I received that sort of advice. My father would be quite different, would be kind of, I think I've told, my father wouldn't really interact too much with me. He'd be working and drinking and upstairs to his room. But it was mainly my mother who would sort of, guide me, give me advice or help me out. It wasn't as intimate as maybe some other parents did it with their children. I think my mum was always quite just very surface level, and it was just very, are you doing okay? That's good. I don't think it was I don't know. That's just what I remember, at least.
Okay, sorry, I was a little confused. I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding something. I'm sure I am. So your mother gave you lots of good and helpful advice, but also was just on the surface and blankly and blandly inquiring as to how you're doing.
Yeah,
So which is it?
it's that one.
Okay, so then your parents did not give you any particularly deep, strong, or helpful advice in any consistent way to deal with the immense challenges of teenage life.
Yes.
Okay, so given that your parents did not invest in you as a teenager, it's absolutely certain, as far as we can be certain of these things, that they did not invest in you as a baby and toddler, which might explain why you started to speak later.
Hmm.
The best,
Yes.
the best way that we know what someone's going to do tomorrow is that we look at what they did yesterday. Relevant past behavior is by far the best predictor of future behavior. So if they didn't invest in you as a teenager, it's absolutely certain in my mind that they did not invest in you as a baby and a toddler. And maybe that's why you had some delays, because you certainly don't seem to have any problem with speech now.
Well, thank you.
It's not
Thank
a
you.
hardware issue, right?
I tend to choke my words sometimes. I'm not as articulate as I used to be. Actually, this brings up an interesting point about with thoughts. So going back to thoughts is another interesting one. I used to be on medication. I used to be on quetiapine.
On what?
And what quetiapine, antipsychotic quetiapine.
Okay.
I was on about 400 milligrams,
And why
and
were
this
you
was
put on that?
so I was diagnosed with BPD in 2016. I had
That's a bipolar disorder?
yeah,
Borderline. Sorry, borderline
borderline
personality disorder.
borderline personality disorder,
Okay.
and I only
On what grounds? That's a description. And on what grounds, or based upon what behavior, were you diagnosed on that?
don't I'll try to keep it vague, but just very heated, uh, very heated moments with people, obsession, that
You got
kind
angry
of.
with people.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah.
And sorry, and I apologize for interrupting. When you were growing up, my friend, did you, in your household, see repeated evidence of people managing or controlling or restraining their own emotions?
Never, never,
Well, how are
never.
you supposed to restrain your own emotions if you never
I
see it
know,
modeled?
I know, I know.
I
It's
mean, that's
crazy,
like me
isn't it?
saying, it's weird that I don't speak Japanese, man. Did
But
you
it's
grow up with
very
anyone
true.
speaking Japanese? No.
No. I
Well,
mean, my grandma was swed like a sailor. My granddad would, we're a very loud household. Always. There was never any decorum or holding back emotions. It was all just very chaotic. And that's very likely why I probably am the way I am. But in 2016, when I got diagnosed with BPD, I was on the medication and I
I'm so
gained a lot
sorry,
of
and
weight.
I might apologize. I know it's so rude, and I will get back to you gaining weight and all of that on the medication. But when you were diagnosed with borderline, was your family history taken into account?
Yes, it was. Actually, it was. Yes. My
Okay, so they
grandma.
said, well, you've grown up without seeing anyone in your household restrain their own temper. They just floridly act out their aggression. And here you
Mm.
are, floridly acting out your aggression. So how is that supposed to be medicated? If it's like, again, it's like me saying,
That's a
well,
brilliant.
hang
Oh,
on, if I grew up in Japan and I didn't speak Japanese, I'd probably have some kind of significant mental defect. But if I grew up in England and I don't speak Japanese, that's kind of par for the course. It's not something that needs to be dealt with. And so, given that you
100%.
grew up with nobody restraining their emotions, the fact that you had very strong and acted out emotions would almost be natural, wouldn't it?
Yes, 100%. And I just want to bounce back from that. So I do agree. I don't think there is a magic pill to make you to treat you for something as for dealing, for feeling like this. So the medication helped. It sort of calmed my emotions, but the thoughts were still there. And I went through therapy. And it's recommended that in order for therapy to be fully, taken advantage of, it's best to be, according to psychologists, psychiatrists, I've been through the system for a long time. Their advice is to be medicated first and then go into therapy. But over time, all it did was just numb me out. It made me gain weight, and it calmed me down. And at the time, I
And it
think I
kills your
needed.
sex drive too, right?
Not for me actually.
Oh, good. Glad to hear that.
But yeah,
I'm
brilliant.
sure, listen, just watching my videos is enough to restart anyone's sex drive, including ancient Egyptian mummies. I just wanted to mention that. But go ahead.
Okay, so yeah. Sorry, I just lost track of yeah, so I gained a lot of weight, and I just felt numb. The thoughts were still there, and that was the issue. I never dealt with the thoughts until
Okay, what
I
thoughts?
went
Which
into
thoughts? Which thoughts? Which thoughts?
the thoughts. Yes,
I mean,
horrendous
trust me,
homicidal
bro, we
thoughts,
all have thoughts.
revenge fantasies, that kind of stuff, stalking, which I never did. Obviously, I never did, but I
Yeah, so
had
you had
these.
a great deal of anger within you.
Yes, yes, I did.
And what's
Right.
wrong with that?
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Uh, I'm not sure how to answer that.
I mean, anger
What's
is
wrong with that? I mean,
a
oh, I guess
necessary.
so.
We
I guess
didn't we didn't evolve
it
anger for
reflects.
no reason, right? Anger is a necessary and healthy emotion in most circumstances. Of course, you can go to extremes and all of that, right? But what's wrong with being angry if you've
I'll
been
answer your question.
provoked?
I'll answer your question. It's actually because being angry as well towards someone, it inflicts pain, unnecessary pain to them, and that
Okay,
is the
towards
issue at
who?
hand. Towards whoever you're being
No,
angry
I
at. I
understand
mean,
that, but towards who in your life were you angry at?
exes, friends, ex-partners, friends, enemies, that kind of stuff. Rivalries I had growing up,
Okay, what about, well,
and
hang on. What about your parents?
I was terrified of my parents. I never really acted out too much on my
No,
parents. I
but
was
you would
mostly
have been angry at your parents if they continually frightened you. Because have you ever
yes,
seen those
yeah,
movies where it's something like the little videos they call scare pranks or scare cams or something like that?
yes,
You
I've
go up and
seen
you go,
them.
ah!
Horrible.
And then somebody will, like sometimes the guy just pop you in the head, right? Because the fear
Yeah,
is followed by the aggression. So that which makes us scared also makes us angry. It's called fight or flight, right? So that which makes us
yeah,
scared also makes us angry. So if your parents frightened you, and they do sound like frightening people, then you would be, I think, logically angry at them too.
yes, I was.
Okay. And is that unhealthy to be angry at people who treat you badly?
No,
Okay, so when you say I was full of anger, my question is, what's wrong with that?
I
Maybe
think
it's
it's
got
only
important
wrong as
information for you. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think there's anything wrong with anger. Again, I learned through therapy sometimes you need to sit with anger, accept it. I did a whole of mentalization therapy, MBT therapy, which was a whole process of sitting with your emotions. And another thing I did later on when I was sort of tampering with my drugs, my quetiapine, is that I would experiment with LSD a lot, and I would sit a lot with my emotions and a lot of my thoughts and anger, and I wouldn't act out on it, but I would sort of I don't know if the word I should use is embrace, but, it's sort of just kind of feel comfortable with the anger,
Okay,
and
sorry, let me ask you this. What is the purpose of anger in the human heart? Why do we have it?
I'm not sure.
You must have
I
some
can
idea.
so
Okay,
why
let me
is
ask you this. What's the purpose? Hang on.
is
What's the
why is
purpose?
anger
Sorry to interrupt. What's the purpose of physical pain?
uh, to tell your body to, sort of a message to send signals to your body that you're in pain and you should not continue being in pain? I'm not sure how to answer that. Sorry, that's not the
No,
best
that's fair.
answer.
So the purpose of pain is twofold. One is to prevent you from doing the immediate thing that is causing you pain. That's number one. And number two, to prevent you from doing it again in the future. So I'll give you a little example for when I was in Ireland as a little kid. I was told about nettles, and nettles are these little stinging plants, and I was curious. And I was like,
Mm.
they said, don't touch the nettles. So as a young boy, what do?
You touch the nettles.
Immediately touch the nettles, right?
Of course.
And so I touched the nettle, and then it hurt because it's got these little poison sacs, right? So it hurt. So that told me, A, stop touching the nettle, and B, don't touch the next one, right? So pain is about the future, not about the past, because the pain can't go back and make me untouch the petal. But what the pain can do is have me stop touching the petal right now, like in the immediate future, and then not touch petals again down the road, right? I don't know if you've ever done this thing, like my brother and I, when we were little, we poured some sand into a wasp's nest, and then an hour or two later, I got hunted down and stung by a wasp or two. And
Oh dear.
yeah, well, listen, I can't blame them. I mean, I'm the doofus who dumped sand in their, or dirt in their wasp nest.
Yeah.
So did I mess with wasps' nests going forward? Answer: I did not, because my pain was telling me don't do that stuff with the wasps.
Well, I guess you could say pain is different to different people. For some people, they have a different tolerance level, and for me, with pain, I I dealt with a lot of self harm growing up, and it sort of fueled a sort of addiction to kind of. So it started off as pain. I don't know how much you know about self harm, but some of it sometimes it's to do, it's an attention. It's a way to grab people's attention, but a lot of it is a sort of pain addiction.
Well, it's
And
also a way to try and make you feel alive, and there's dopamine
yeah,
when you stop.
yeah, which is so maybe I wouldn't be constantly kicking a hornet's nest, hoping to get bees sting me every couple of weeks. But I went through a strange phase of
No, it's not. It's
yeah.
not strange if you grew up in a very painful household, then you can't manage the fact that you're in pain, because you being in pain, emotional pain, comes from your parents being drunken and violent and whatever else, the yelling, screaming, whatever the assaults were going on. So you can't control that people are drunken and violent in your environment. What you can do, though, is you can manage your reaction to it. So I have an analogy in one of my books, which I think everyone should read, Real-Time Relationships. It's called Simon the Boxer. So Simon is beaten up as a child all the time. Now, he can't control whether he's beaten up. His only sense of control is how he reacts and manages and controls the experience or the feelings of being beaten up. So he manages the feelings because he can't manage being beaten up. And so his only sense of control and power is controlling and managing his experience of violence. But then the problem is when he gets older, he's drawn to violence because that's all he knows in terms of control is how to manage the experience of violence. So he becomes a boxer. And then so this is Simon the Boxer. It's a way of talking about repetition compulsion. And so if you grew up with pain being inflicted upon you, managing pain would be the only way you get a sense of control. And then when you start self-cutting, what are you doing? You're managing pain, and it gives you a sense of control that is familiar.
Yes. But why is it because it's a slippery slope with pain. And why is it with violence? Sorry, not pain, with violence. It's a slippery slope with violence. Why is it so you're saying it's a way to cope, and people who have my mind is sort of hazy right now.
No, that's fine. And the reason, I appreciate that's no problem at all. The reason that we're going a little adrift is we were originally talking about anger, and I asked what's the purpose of pain. So the purpose of pain is to, in a generally healthy way, is to keep you safe. Now, what is the purpose of anger? The purpose of anger is to also keep you safe. So if you're hiking in the woods and some bear jumps up and starts chasing you, then you're going to feel your fight or flight's going to kick in and so on, and you're going to run away. Now, let's say you get back home and your older brother says, "Oh yeah, I saw that bear earlier today." What would you feel?
Yeah, I'd feel angry.
Yeah, and what would you say to him?
Well, brother, why didn't you tell me the bear was out there?
Why the fuck did you tell me about the bear? Could have got
The
my head ripped
goddamn
off.
bear.
Yeah.
I would.
So you would be angry, and your anger would be that your brother, by not telling you, put you in massive danger, mortal danger. So you'd be frightened of the bear and angry at your brother. And the reason you'd be angry at your brother is you'd want your brother to tell you if he sees a bear or something. Like, it's a general principle. If you see something dangerous and you see your little brother going out into the woods and you saw a bear out there earlier, say, whoa, come back here. There's a bear out there.
I'd be more frightened for my brother and more angry towards the bear.
What do you mean?
I'd be angry for the bear for trying to kill me, and I'd be more frightened for the fact that my brother didn't tell me that there was a bear out there in the first place.
That would be after you gave up on your brother, but beforehand, you'd probably try and say something to him to remind him. So anger is there. Think of anger like the immune system of the soul, so to speak, right? So your immune system is supposed to protect your healthy cells by attacking bacteria, viruses, bad, whatever it is, right? Hopefully cancer and stuff like that. So if you have too little immune system, then you're in danger, right? Because you get sick from everything, right? It's like having crazy allergies. You've got to end up living like a boy in a bubble or something like that, some sealed environment with no germs. So if you have too little immune system, that's like having too little anger. You get attacked and taken over by everything. You get pushed around and so on. If you have too much anger, that's like having an autoimmune disorder where your immune system is no longer attacking the bad things, it's attacking the good things, like your heart or your liver or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So anger is like right in the Aristotelian mean. So if you have thoughts of anger when you have in fact been in danger and people are responsible for it and people are still endangering you, right? So your brother put you in danger by not telling you about the bear, you'd be angry at him. And so
Yes.
if people have put you in danger and you're angry at them, that's healthy.
But it's the reaction as well. I mean, I guess the worst reaction would just to kill my brother and to say, "How dare you for trying to kill me?" Or more
No,
sensible
that would, hang
reaction
on. So anger is there to keep you safe. Does killing your brother, let's just throw the morals out of, we'll just throw the morals out for the moment. We'll just explore this from a
Okay.
cause and effect standpoint, which is fine. Would killing your brother keep you safe?
I guess you could argue it would, because then I wouldn't have to worry of him telling me, lying to my face again. Sorry, I'm sort of in a giggly mood.
No, that's fine. That's fine. At least you're better than the guy who had no energy. So, no, that's an interesting question, right? So what's the ideal outcome of you almost getting your face chewed off by the bear that your brother didn't tell you about? Let's say you get angry at him. What's the ideal outcome from that?
For him to apologize to always ensure.
Because then you have someone who's going to watch your back and tell you about the bears or whatever, right? You get an
Yes.
ally. So the best outcome is if you don't get angry at all with your brother doesn't know he did something wrong and can't do better, right?
Right.
So not getting angry at all is a bad outcome. Getting too angry and going all Cain and Abel on him and taking his head out with a giant boulder, right? That is also a bad outcome because your parents are going to get mad at you. Everyone else is going to get mad at you. You don't have anyone to warn you about the bear, and some other brother might kill you back or whatever it is. Like, so you want something in the middle where you get angry enough at him that he understands he did something wrong and hopefully will do better, but not so angry at him that you put yourself in even more danger than the bear was.
Yeah, of course.
So when you say I was angry, listen, if you had been raised by some absolutely wonderful family, your needs were met, they loved you, they gave you appropriate challenges, they enjoyed your company, they gave you great advice, they loved spending time with you, and then you say, I'm full of rage at the world, I'd be like, really? But
Where did
why?
that come from?
Right?
Where did that come from?
But you had a terrible childhood in many ways, right? I mean, drunkenness is terrible because you have emotional distance for you. People can't be close to you if they're drinking because you can only interact with the alcohol, not with them. So you had alcoholism, you had violence, you had conflict, you have very little parental investment, and then it was all blamed on what? Bad chemical imbalances in the brain, none of which have ever been proven.
Yeah,
and then you were thrown on a bunch of meds and you were diagnosed with this, that, and the other. And then, they put you on more meds that made you fat. And then they put you on more meds that blunted all of your emotions. At least you kept your penis heading skyward from time to time. So that's a plus. But you were badly treated, in my humble opinion. And so being angry when you're badly treated is healthy because your anger is telling you to do something different, to change something in your environment. Now, you can't change people in that way, but have you talked to your parents about the things that happened when you were a kid that were bad or negative for you?
I really don't want to go with my parents, talking about my parents, to be honest. But I'd like to, with anger, sometimes with thoughts. The problem with anger is sometimes the duration, how long the anger stays into your system. So I have no problem feeling angry in the moment, but the problem with me and the problem why I was medicated and the reason why I was, put on a meds and had therapy was because my anger I would obsess over it. So the
Okay,
anger
sorry to interrupt. I just needed a timeline. So at what age were you put on the meds?
2016, so I'm 29 years old. Can't do the math right now. If you can do the math, then well done.
2000. So when you were 19.
Yes.
Okay.
As was,
And when did you move out of home?
I moved out 3 years ago.
Well, there you go. So that's why your anger wouldn't go away, because the stimulus was still there. Like, my hand doesn't stop hurting if I keep hitting it with a hammer. Right? So the anger diminishes when the bad treatment diminishes.
But I still have the anger. The anger hasn't gone away.
Well, that's why I was asking you if you've talked to your parents or not, but you don't want to talk about that, and that's totally fine. Obviously, don't talk about anything you don't want to talk about. But if somebody is angry a lot and the thoughts are circling around in their head, in my view, and again, I'm no psychiatrist, I'm no psychologist, I'm just a guy on the internet, so take all of this with a total grain of salt. It's just an amateur opinion. But the way that I look at anger is, if somebody is chronically angry, I look at how they're being chronically wronged.
Mm.
And did your parents ever say, maybe we didn't do such a bang-up job as parents, and maybe that's at least part of the reason why our son is upset?
Yeah, they've said that.
Good. Okay. Did they go to therapy? Did they take any anger management program? Did they do detox? Did they deal with their alcoholism? Did they deal with their violence? Did they make amends and apologize and all that kind of good stuff?
So they actually refused to do family therapy with me, which was a real shame. I was really hoping to do family therapy because I thought the main problem was the dynamic of the household. And I thought that my parents would always say, "You need the therapist. We don't need the therapist." So that was
I thought you
unfortunate for
said
me.
they took responsibility for some of the negative things they did as parents.
Did I?
Yes, you did. I said, did your parents ever say, hey, maybe it's something to do with us? And you said, oh, yes. And now they said, well, you need therapy, we don't. So they blamed you. They blamed you for their own bad parenting. Of course you were angry. I would be too. Anybody would be.
Well,
it's
they
like
took
that brother who grabs your hand and makes you hit yourself and say, why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself? It's kind of annoying. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot what I was talking about.
But I'm just saying that anger continues until the bad behavior goes away. That's why I asked when you moved out. So if your parents were bad parents in many ways, of course, I know it's not 100% or whatever it is, right? If your parents were bad parents, if they were drunks and yelling and screaming at each other and hitting people and whatever, fists through walls, whatever bullshit was going on, if your parents were bad parents and then they say, the only problem with you is you, that's being turbo douchebags, to use a Latin phrase.
Yeah.
Right? That's really terrible behavior because that's treating someone really badly to the point where they get very angry and then saying, well, you seem to have a significant anger problem. Isn't that strange?
I wonder why,
we better
Dad.
drug you because you're crazy.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
You've had those people, I've had people occasionally like this in my life. They needle you, and when you finally say, fuck off, they say, whoa,
why'd you do that? Why'd you say, oh, yeah. That was
Wh-
always with my dad. My dad would always just pinch me or punch me in the shoulder as a joke. It was play fighting, but it got to the point where I'd be like, fuck off, Dad. And I'd see his face just completely drop. And he'd be like, how dare you, son? Don't you ever shout at me like that.
Yeah.
So I had to deal with that a lot growing up.
So you got raised by a common bridge troll.
I suppose.
No, this is what trolls do on the internet, right? And yeah, the people who just needle
trolls,
you and give you subtle jabs and insults, and then when you finally say, will you stop doing that? They're like, whoa, I guess I hit a nerve. Okay.
Yeah, fuck you, Dad.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I would say, fuck you, Dad. And my dad would be, oh, how dare you say fuck you? How
Right.
dare you go to your room? Yeah, it would be
As
like
opposed to trying to figure out why your son might be angry because you keep pinching and poking and taunting him, right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is like the guy who pokes the dog with a stick and then tries to have it put down because it bit him.
Yeah.
So yeah, listen, bro, you were highly provoked, and it seems to me, it seems to me entirely, it's not crazy to be angry, it'd be crazy to not be angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking, how do you know there's anything wrong with anger? Maybe people are being assholes around you. I call it APD, like it's a mental category called APD, asshole proximity disorder.
Brilliant. I guess again, I've got no problem with sinning with anger. It's just I like to react as diplomatically as possible and with as little violence as possible.
No, you
So
don't. No, you
no, I don't.
don't. Other people want you to do that.
Well, yeah, but it's sort of trained in my brain
Yeah, no, I
after
get that for sure. I get that.
medication and gaslighting. I've learned to almost sucker punch, almost just soak it all up and just
No, but don't do that. Obviously, don't act out your anger in violent ways, blah, blah, blah. We know all of that, right? And I was actually just having a conversation with my wife at dinner before the show, which is how ungodly difficult it is to deal with passive-aggressive people.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh my God, they are just the absolute foggy demons of the human arteries. They really are monstrous. So
It's a
dealing with
beautiful skill.
passive-aggressive... I'm so sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to just comment. It's a very skill. It's a good skill to have, being passive aggressive. It's incredibly impressive.
Oh, you can't win. Yeah, it's almost
you can't win.
impossible. So, if you're in
Yeah.
an argument with someone and someone keeps throwing jabs and putting you down but it's kind of
Yeah.
subtle and so on, then what happens is eventually you're just like, will you stop saying these
Yes.
stupid fucking jabs and just actually have a civilized argument? And what do people say when you do that?
Oh, it's just in your head.
Oh,
It's in your
he
head.
got
Oh,
really
you're just-
triggered. Look, he just
Yeah,
lost his temper.
yeah.
He went
Oh, look at
crazy.
you. He might be autistic. He might need to be on medication.
Right. He might be over-focused on truth at the expense of his social
reputation.
reputation. Never heard of that.
Yeah.
So the passive-aggressive, if people can't see it, if you call out the passive-aggressive stuff, then the passive-aggressive person recoils in shock and horror that they were just making a joke, that they were just making a comment, that they didn't mean anything by it, and they just tried to make you look irascible, aggressive, and crazy, and ill-tempered, and blah, 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 right? But if you don't call it out, then you look weak because somebody's making jabs at you and you're not saying anything about it. So I was just thinking about this at dinner, like for a variety of reasons that aren't important to get into here, like the no-win situations with people, right? So with your dad, he keeps poking and poking and annoying and poking and annoying and poking. And then you finally say, fuck off, Dad, or whatever you say. And he's like, oh, how dare you? And it's like, you can't win. You just let him keep poking you until you lose your fucking mind. Or do you
Should I have poked him back? Should I have poked him back? I didn't. That's the thing. I didn't poke him back. I just said, fuck you. Maybe I should have poked him back, but I never.
No, because, okay, if you'd have poked him back, he would have just come up with something else that's negative.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Or he would have said, oh, I really enjoy that, son. That's a little ticklish. And then that would have made you even more crazy, right? So, no, people who put you in these kinds of impossible situations, the no-win situations, personally, I'm not saying anything to do with your family. I don't do no-win situations. Like if somebody puts me in a no-win situation, like let's say somebody says, I want you to tell me the truth. And then I tell them the truth and they say, oh my God, I'm so offended. That's appalling. How could you say that to me? It's like, then don't ask me for the truth if you don't want the truth, right? And so when people do that kind of stuff, I just check out. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say everyone wants a tailored truth, their own truth. It's there is no complete certain truth. It's everyone has their different version of the truth.
Well, then it's not the truth. Then it's just an opinion, right? But, so the people who, like I remember when I was growing up, people were always like, we need to have an honest conversation about race. Race is very important. Racism is bad. We need to have an honest conversation about race. This was big under the Obama era. So then I'm like, hey, different races have different IQs. That's a statistical fact in the world. And people are like, oh my God, how horrible, how appalling. And it's like you just said you wanted an honest conversation about race. Shouldn't we be factual, at least in part? And so on, right? And so that's just like I don't engage with people who do that bait and switch, like that they invite you in. Like my mother used to do this thing. I've said this before, where she'd say, I want you to do this and then this and then this and then this and then carry this over here and then do this and clean up, and there'd be this long list, right? And I'd be like 7 or 8 years old, and I'd get confused. I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to be doing at this point, right? And then she'd storm out, right? And then I'd be like, okay, I can't possibly get this right because there were like 10 things to do and I didn't write it down or whatever, right? And so then I'm stuck. Because what happens if I try to do it and get some things wrong? What happens?
Well, she retaliates.
Well, she gets mad. I told you to do this and you didn't even do it, right? Now, if I go to my mom and I say, listen, I didn't quite follow that. Can you tell me again? Can you write it down? What does she say?
Your mum. No, you're not your grandma.
Stay with me, bro. Come on. Fight the meds. Stay with me.
Sorry. I'm just, my mind's jumping. Can you repeat that?
Okay,
Sorry.
so
I apologize.
it's all right. So if I try to do my mom's complicated list of things, I'm going to get something wrong, and she's going to get
Yes.
mad at me. But if I go back and ask her, like, can you go through that again? She said, weren't you listening? I already told you. Why don't you ever listen? Like, she just gets mad at that, right? So that's a no-win
Yeah.
situation, right? And there's tons of that kind of stuff. I had to put up with it when I was 7 or 8. I sure as shit don't have to put up with it now from anyone, right?
Mm.
So I think in a situation where you are in a no-win situation, you can't win no matter what you do. Your dad's poking you. If you move away, he's like, hey, son, where are you going? I was only kidding, blah, 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 blah. Don't be so sensitive. Don't take it personally. It was just a joke, blah, 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 right? So you're bad for doing that. If you poke him back, he pretends to enjoy it to make you feel crazy. If you get mad at him, he's really upset. And how dare you? And then you get punished. That if you just sit there and keep getting poked, it kind of makes you angry. So that you can't win no matter what you do. And there's lots of setups like that in life as well. And so if you're in a situation where you're being constantly provoked, why would you not have constant thoughts of anger?
Mm.
It's like somebody torturing you and then you being surprised that it still hurts.
A lot of what I deal with is the duration of the anger. So I learned with during MBT therapy was the way the emotion. Have you heard of emotion amplification of emotions? So the spike, the trigger for the emotion, and how long that emotion rises and stays, peaks, and then slowly kind of. And with some people, it's very different. But for me, my emotions, especially with anger, it would peak, spike all the way up, and it would just stay, and stay.
Okay, so
would
hang on, sorry. So let's say that you and I are friends for longer than just the duration of this call, but let's say you and I are friends and I do something that hurts you, right? You're going to be upset, right?
Yes, very much so. And I'll
Okay.
be thinking about it all night.
All right. No. So we're friends, right? So we're friends, so you tell me.
Sure.
And you say, Steph, when you said that, it really bugged me. It really made me upset. And let's say you're right. I did something, as people do from time to time, insensitive or thoughtless or whatever it is, right? Now, how do I cool your anger? Assuming that you're in the right, which you could very well be, and in this case you are.
Yeah. I can answer that.
Yeah.
A lot of reassurance, a lot of validation, and a lot of reassurance and validation, which is something, again, with BPD, is that kind of neediness for approval. Like, did I do anything wrong?
You've had some girly girl therapists, haven't you, brother?
Yes, I've had a mixture.
I just need you to
it's why I
validate
prefer
my
male.
experience, and you
It's
just
why
need to tell me that I'm right and ask me
Yeah.
about it and empathize. And okay, that's
it's why I
fine, but it's a
prefer
little
male-
girly,
It's why I
right?
prefer male therapists. I much prefer male therapists to
Right.
female therapists.
So what I need to do is 3 things. If I've done something that objectively is wrong, and I agree with you that it's wrong and harmful, there's 3 things that I need to do. Number 1, I need to accept your feelings. Number 2, I need to apologize. And number 3, I need to make restitution. So let's say I borrow your car and I put a dent in the door, right?
Yes.
Now, so I bring the car back and you're like, Steph, you doofus, why is there a dent in the door? And I say, I validate your feelings. I understand where you're coming from. I really, really feel for you. And I think you're absolutely right. And I honor the expression of emotion that you have provided to me. And then I just fuck off. How do you feel?
I'd laugh in the moment. I'd be in hysterics.
But I validated you, bro. Yes, I agree with you. Emotionally, there is a dent. I feel that dent. Look at me caress the dent. I will caress the dent and rub your elbow and maybe your ass a little at the same time. I'm validating both the dent and your butt cheek. And I just honor and express and sympathize. And then I just fuck off. How do you feel?
I apologize for the laughing.
No, it's a little funny.
Well, I'd probably it would be quite funny. I would laugh, and actually, if that was the approach you took, I would be laughing. I would actually
But you know I'd be
admire
joking, right?
your sense of humor. Well, I'd hope you'd be joking.
Yeah, so
Sure.
what would you want me to do?
Probably pay for the damage.
Yeah, fix the
Yeah.
car. I don't care
Fix
about
the
your
goddamn
validations.
car,
Fix my
man.
fucking car. No, but I am caressing your ass cheeks and validating your emotions. I do not need to fix your stinking car. Right? I mean, so
Yeah.
I need to apologize. Yeah, you know what? You're right. I turned too hard into a garden gnome. And it didn't move. I told it to move, silly hobbit. And I put a dent in. You can still see the little face. Looks exactly like Frodo. And I will take it tomorrow and I will get it fixed. And I'm really, really sorry. And I will be way more careful when I borrow your car again in the future. And I'm
Dude,
going to throw in an
wish-
extra $100 for your trouble.
Dude, I would rather have that. I would rather have a friend like that than someone who would just not pay. I would rather have that sort of friendship, if I was to be completely honest.
You mean the
because that would
validation shit?
No, just the humor, the sense of
Oh,
humor,
yeah,
the
yeah.
absurdity.
Yeah.
That would just be that would be just the best friendship, honestly.
Imagine you cheat on your girlfriend and she's like, "You cheated on me, you asshole." I validate your emotions. My penis went on walkabout. It definitely dipped its hooded dingbat into somebody else's mulberry bush, and I validate and I understand and I feel, cop a little feel, and I feel your feelings and I understand where you're coming from. And what's going to happen, my dear, what's going to happen, Maggie, is your emotions are they're gonna rise suddenly, like my penis with Ethel. It's gonna rise suddenly, and then it's going to peak, like I peaked down her cleavage earlier, and then it's going to slowly subside. This is like the female orgasm that I've read about. I don't know what it is, but I've heard about it. I think it's a myth. It's like Bigfoot or something like that. Or maybe Bigfoot gives women female orgasms. I can't remember. But anyway, it's going to peak, and then it's going to diminish. It's going to diminish over time, and then it's going to run its course, and you're going to feel better, and that's it. And then you leave. I mean, would she be like, well, I guess that's sorted?
I'm speechless.
Right.
I apologize.
No, so you'd feel terrible. You'd have to apologize. You'd have to make amends as best you could. You'd have to figure out some way that it was never going to happen again or something like that. So the validation shit, whatever. Okay, it gives me a sort of minor matriarchal migraine, but okay, whatever. So yeah, validate,
or a
whatever,
dopamine
right?
fix,
But women are all about validating because it's fucking lazy. Women love to validate because you don't have to do shit. You don't have to fix people's car. You just have to validate. Yeah, I'd love it. Yeah, great. Yes, I'll be a master oncologist. You know, I have cancer. Oh, I validate your feeling. Oh, that's bad.
You can have both. You can have the validation
cancer. That gets a 2 thumbs down from me. I validate your negative feelings about your cancer. Oh, that's awful. How dare that naughty cancer. I disapprove. I flick my fingers. I make Italian gestures like I'm putting on something from VR. I validate your negative feelings about cancer. It's like, can you cure it? No, I'm validating. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh God, just losing it. You're just making me laugh so much. Fucking hell.
I mean, hey, I'd love to have a job where I just have to validate shit. It's like being a parking attendant. Can you validate my ticket? Yes, that'll be $10,000, please. Validation sounds great. I don't have to do anything other than empathize.
It's like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest here. Bloody hell.
Having a pecking party. Yeah, no, I think I hate the patriarchy. Yes, I validate, along with all other patriarchal members. I absolutely validate your frustration and negativity. And gonna change anything? No, it's really just about validation, you see. It's like, oh my God. You stole something from me. Yes, I validate your sensitivity to your loss of property right. You're going to give it back? No, I'm providing validation. I don't need to bring back the car I stole.
It's like you're caught in a web.
It's just like, are you kidding me? Can you do something? No.
Yeah.
I just validate. Like, can you validate my punch to your noggin? Because that's what I'm sort of feeling right now to people who just validate. Yes, you're so right. Oh, I agree. Oh, yes. Oh, I feel it too. It's like, it's so oily. It's gross. It's like that guy who's measuring your inseam who just lasts just a little too long. It's like, I don't think you're supposed to measure my inseam with Diddy oil. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I think I'm gonna have to call it a night.
I'm tired you out.
I'm in hysterics right now.
We're out of meds. Okay. All right. Well, listen,
You've
sorry
definitely
to
got rid of the anger. You've definitely got rid of the long anger.
See, not that hard. Just giggle your way to joy.
Just giggle away.
All right. Well,
Thank
listen,
you
I
for that.
appreciate the call. You're certainly welcome back anytime. And I appreciate you giving me some avenues for comic relief, because I just think that stuff is very funny, the validation. You know, you don't need to solve your woman's problems. You just need to validate her and go, hoank, hoank, and make motorboat noises. Anyway, so have yourself a glorious evening, everyone. Thank you for dropping by tonight. We will be talking to you Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Don't forget worldwardebate.com. For your tickets, use the promo code Stefan, Stefan, for 10% off, and I hope to see you at the VIP. If you've got tickets, you can come to the meetup for free. That's going to be before the debate earlier in the day. And of course, freedomain.com/donate to help out the show. I would really appreciate that. And you can go to shop.freedomain.com for your merch, peacefulparenting.com. Please download Ask the AI and share about peaceful parenting. And there's great communities you can join for access to more AIs and hundreds of great premium podcasts. Thanks to James for the great research tonight. Thanks to the callers. Lots of love, my friends. We'll talk soon. Bye.